Maya Thornwood stood in the center of the grand hall, with chains binding her wrists and her head. Bowed in shame, the Elven Council members stared at her with disgust. Written across their perfect faces, she was the youngest daughter of High Counselor. Thornwood and she should have been beautiful like her sisters, but a childhood accident had left a terrible scar across her left cheek. The elven world of Luminara beauty was everything, and Maya was considered broken. Her father stood at the high podium, refusing to look at her. He had just announced her sentence to the entire council, and Maya still could not believe this was happening. Shay had discovered secret messages in her father's private study, showing he was selling information to enemy factions during the war. When she confronted him about it, he had turned everything against her now. She stood accused of treason herself, and the punishment was worse than death. The council had decided to send her as a peace offering to Kieran Ashbourne, the most feared dragon lord in the galaxy. For 300 years, the elven people had fought against the dragon lords in a brutal war that spanned countless star systems. Everyone knew the dragon lords were monsters who collected treasures and destroyed entire worlds for fun. Being given to one was the ultimate humiliation. 2 guards grabbed Maya by her arms and dragged her toward the transport shipper. Sisters watched from the viewing gallery with satisfied smiles. They had always hated her for being different, and now they were finally rid of their ugly sister. Maya did not cry, even though fear clawed at her heart. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. The journey through space took 3 days, and Maya was locked in a small cargo hold with barely any light. The guards threw scraps of food at her twice a day and laughed at her situation. In the second day, Maya heard a strange sound coming from behind some crates. In the corner, she crawled over despite her chains and found something that made her gasp. A small dragon hatchling lay dying among the cargo. Its silver scales were dull and cracked, and one of its wings was bent at a wrong angle. Poor creature was barely breathing. Maya knew immediately that the crew had abandoned it here. 2 die dragons were supposed to be fearless and powerful, but this tiny being looked so helpless. Something in Maya's heart stirred, and she carefully picked up the hatchling store strips from her ceremonial dress and used them to bind the broken wing. There was a small water container nearby, and she dripped water into the hatchling's mouth. For hours she sat there holding the small dragon close to her body to keep it warm. The hatchling's eyes opened just once and looked at Maya with an intelligence that surprised her, and it made a soft chirping sound and nestled closer to her. Maya smiled for the first time in weeks. At least she was not completely alone anymore. The 3rd day, the ship landed with a heavy thud that shook the entire cargo hold. The guards came to get Maya, and when they saw her holding the hatchling, they laughed even harder. One of them kicked at the small dragon, but Maya moved to shield it with her own body. The guard hit her instead, and she fell hard against the metal floor. Still, she did not let go of the hatchling. Thea dragged her out of the ship and onto the surface of a world unlike anything Maya had ever seen. Black volcanic mountains rose into a purple sky, and rivers of molten lava flowed between massive crystal formations. The air was hot and smelled of sulfur and burning stone. This was the Obsidian Reaches, the home of the Dragon Lords. A massive fortress carved from black volcanic rock stood before them. Its towers reached high into the sky, and strange lights glowed from within. The guards forced Maya to walk up a long stairway leading to the main entrance. Her legs shook with exhaustion and fear, but she kept moving. The hatchling in her arms had grown quiet, and she prayed it would survive just a little longer. The great doors opened, and Maya was pushed into a throne room larger than any building on. Luminara flames burned in huge braziers along the walls, casting dancing shadows everywhere. At the far end of the room, a figure sat on a throne made of black metal and dragon bones. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Kieran Ashbourne was not what she had expected at all. He was tall and looked almost human at first glance, with dark hair that fell too. His shoulders and strong features, but his eyes burned with an inner fire like dying stars, and when shadows crossed his face, Maya could see something else beneath the human appearance, something ancient and powerful and definitely not human. He stood slowly and walked down from his throne with movements that were too graceful to be entirely human. The guards threw Maya down onto her knees in front of him, and the hatchling tumbled from her arms. Kieran stopped and looked down at them both as burning eyes moved from the scarred elven woman to the dying silver dragon. For a long moment, he said nothing, and Maya held her breath, waiting for whatever terrible fate awaited her. Then Kieran spoke, and his voice was deep and surprisingly gentle. He said that they had sent him a scarred maiden and a dying child. He bent down and carefully picked up the hatchling, examining its broken wing with experienced hands. Then looked at Maya, really looked at her, and something in his expression changed. Asked her name, and Maya whispered, "I've asked if she had cared for the dragon," and Maya nodded. Kieran extended his hand to her, and for the first time since entering this place, Maya felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe the stories about the Dragon Lords had been wrong. Maybe she would not die here. After all, she took his hand and let him help her to her feet. Chains on her wrists suddenly fell away, turning to dust at Kieran's touch. He told her she was no longer a prisoner. He told her she was welcome. In his home, then, he carried the small dragon toward a side door and gestured for Maya to follow him as she walked behind the Dragon Lord through corridors filled with strange and beautiful things. Maya felt her world shifting. Everything she had been taught, everything she believed, was starting to crack. Like the shell of an egg, something new was beginning, and Maya did not know if she should be terrified or excited. The hatchling made another small sound, and Kieran looked back at Maya with the hint of a smile. He said the dragon had chosen well. Maya did not understand what he meant, but she followed him deeper into the fortress, knowing that her old life was gone forever. Maya woke in a room filled with soft golden light. For a moment she forgot where she was, and panic seized her heart. Then she remembered the fortress and the Dragon Lord, and the dying hatchling. Sat up quickly and looked around. The room was more beautiful than her chamber's back on luminar silk curtains hung from the ceiling, and the bed was covered in furs softer than anything she had ever touched. Through a large window she could see the volcanic landscape bathed in the light of two suns. A gentle knock came at the door, and a young woman entered carrying a tray of food. She had kind eyes, and when she saw Maya awake, she smiled warmly. Woman introduced herself as Claire and said she would be helping Maya get settled. She explained that Kieran had spent all night working to save the dragon hatchling, and the little one would survive. Relief flooded through Maya, and tears came to her. Claire set down the food and told Maya to eat as much as she wanted. Then she brought out clothing that was nothing like the restrictive gowns Maya had worn all her life. These were practical garments made for movement and comfort. After Maya had eaten and dressed, Claire took her on a tour of the fortress. What Maya saw amazed her beyond words. Obsidian Reaches was not a prison or a dark lair of monsters. It was a thriving city built into the volcanic mountains. Of different species lived here in peace. There were humans and scaled reptilian beings and creatures Maya had never seen before. Children played in courtyards filled with gardens that should not be able to grow in volcanic soil. Markets bustled with trade and laughter. Claire explained that all these people were refugees from the war. The Dragon Lords had given them shelter when their own worlds were destroyed. Maya felt her understanding of everything crack a little more. She had been taught that the Dragon Lords started the war to conquer and destroy. But these people spoke of Kieran and the other Dragon Lords as saviors and protectors. In the afternoon, Kieran sent for Maya. She was nervous as Claire led her to a large study filled with books and star charts. Kieran stood by a window, watching the volcanic landscape. He turned when Maya entered and gestured for her too. Scythe began to tell her the truth about the war 300 years ago. The Elven Council had decided to expand their empire. They viewed other species as inferior and began conquering their worlds. The Dragon Lords, who had lived peacefully for thousands of years, were forced to fight back. They became protectors of the smaller civilizations, defending refugee worlds from elven aggression. Everything Maya had been taught was a lie. Her people were not the heroes of this story. They were the invaders. Kieran showed her documents and recordings that proved every word. Maya felt sick as she realized what her father and the council had done. How many billions had died because of elven pride and greed. She looked at Kieran and asked why he was showing her all this. He said because she deserved to know the truth. He said she was not a prisoner and was free to leave if she wished, but he hoped she would stay because he could see she was different from the others. Just then a small chirping sound came from a cushioned box near the fireplace. Maya rushed over and found the silver hatchling awake and looking much better. Wing was carefully bandaged, and its scales had regained some of their shine. The little dragon saw Maya and made excited sounds. It climbed up her arm and perched on her shoulder, nuzzling against her neck. Kieran watched with surprise on his face. He explained that dragons rarely bond with anyone outside their own kind, but this little one had clearly chosen Maya as its companion. Bond between dragon and rider was sacred, and unbreakable Maya felt warmth spread through her chest as the hatchling chirped in her ears. Asked what she should name it, Kieran smiled and said that was her choice to make. Maya thought for a moment, and then said she would call the dragon Luna. The weeks that followed changed Maya in ways she never imagined possible. Kieran gave her access to his vast library, and she spent hours reading the real history of the galaxy. She learned about civilizations her people had destroyed and heroes they had vilified. Luna grew rapidly, bonding more deeply with Maya each day. A strange connection formed between them where Maya could sense what Luna was feeling sometimes. She even heard Luna's thoughts in her mind like distant whispers. Kieran began teaching Maya about the wider galaxy beyond elven propaganda. He showed her combat techniques and strategic thinking, treated her opinions with respect, and often asked for her counsel on matters of state. For the first time in her life, Maya felt valued for her mind rather than judged for her appearance. One evening, Kieran found Maya sitting on a balcony with Luna curled in her lap. Two suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. He sat beside her, and they talked for hours about everything and nothing. Maya realized she had stopped wearing the veils that used to hide her scar here. Nobody stared at her with disgust here. She was simply Maya. Kieran reached out and gently traced the line of her scar with one finger. He said it was a mark of survival and strength. He said she was beautiful, and the way he looked at her made Maya believe it might be true, but their peaceful time was coming to an end. Reports arrived from the border worlds of increased elven military activity. Kieran's scouts had discovered something terrible. The Elven Council was building a super weapon called the Starbreaker. It had the power to shatter entire planetary systems, turning them into cosmic dust. Maya's father was leading the project. The war was about to enter its final and most devastating phase. Kieran called a meeting of his commanders and insisted Maya attend. She stood in the war room surrounded by battle-hardened warriors who had fought for centuries. At first, some of them questioned why an elf should be present, but when Maya began speaking, sharing her knowledge of elven tactics and weaknesses, their doubts faded. She had inside information that could save countless lives. After the meeting, Kieran walked with Maya through the crystal gardens. Luna flew overhead, practicing her flight now that her wing had healed. Kieran told Maya he was sorry she had been dragged into this war, but Maya shook her head. She said she had spent her whole life being useless and hidden. Now she finally had a purpose. She wanted to help stop the Starbreaker and save both elven and non-elven lives. Kieran looked at her with something deep and warm in his burning eyes. He said she was the bravest person he had ever met. That night, as Maya lay in bed with Luna curled beside her, she realized something startling. She was happy despite the war, despite the danger, despite everything she had lost here. In the home of the so-called monster, she had found something she never had before. She had found acceptance and purpose, and maybe even love. Tomorrow, they would begin planning their counterattack against the Starbreaker Tor. The real fight would begin, but tonight Maya allowed herself to simply be grateful for this strange new life. Luna chirped softly in her sleep, and Maya smiled in the darkness. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 3 months had passed since Maya first arrived at the Obsidian Reaches. She stood now on a training platform high above the fortress, with Luna circling in the sky above. Hertha, small hatchling, had grown into a magnificent dragon nearly the size of a transport ship. Her silver scales gleamed in the sunlight, and her wings created powerful gusts of wind. With each beat, Maya wore combat gear instead of flowing dresses, and her short silver hair was tied back for practice. Her scar was painted with blue war paint that made it stand out proudly. She had become someone entirely different from the scared girl who arrived in chains. Kieran stood across from her on the platform holding a training staff. They had been sparring for an hour, and Maya was getting faster with each session. Dragon bond with Luna had awakened something inside her. She could move with inhuman speed, and her reflexes had sharpened to supernatural levels. Kieran attacked and Maya blocked the strike, spinning to counter their staffs clashed with sharp cracks echoing across the mountains. For several minutes they fought, neither gaining the advantage. Finally, Kieran called a halt and lowered his weapon. With a smile, he told Maya she had surpassed most of his veteran warrior's pride swelled in Maya's chest at his praise. Luna landed beside them and nuzzled Maya affectionately. Through their bond, Maya could feel Luna's joy and excitement. The dragon loved these training sessions almost as much as Maya did. That evening, Kieran gathered the 7 dragon lords who still survived from the ancient times they came from across the galaxy to meet in the great hall. Maya stood beside Kieran as the massive beings entered one by one. Some appeared human-like, while others showed their draconic nature openly with scales and wings. All of them radiated ancient power that made the air itself feel heavy. They stared at Maya with suspicion and curiosity. One of them, named Drake, asked why an elf was present at their war council. Before Kieran could answer, Maya stepped forward. She had prepared for this moment. She activated a holographic display showing detailed schematics of the Starbreaker weapon. For the next hour, Maya explained everything she had learned about the project. She knew how Elven military command thought because she had grown up among them. She identified weaknesses in their defense systems and proposed strategies that no outsider could have conceived. The Dragon Lords listened with growing interest. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then Drake nodded slowly and said the elf woman had wisdom beyond her years. One by one, other Dragon Lords acknowledged her value. Kieran looked at Maya with such pride and warmth that her heart skipped. After the council, Maya found Kieran alone on a balcony overlooking the lava flows. She joined him in foray. While they simply stood together and comfortable, Salinskrin told her about the weight of immortality. He had lived for over 5,000 years, watching friends grow old and die. He had fought in countless wars and seen civilizations rise and fall. Sometimes he felt so tired of the endless struggle. Maya took his hand and squeezed it gently. She shared her own pain of a lifetime spent being rejected and hidden away. She told him about the loneliness of being the family disappointment. They both understood what it meant to carry scars that others could not see. Kieran turned to face her fully and lifted her chin. With gentle fingers, he said she had brought light back into his ancient life. He said she made him remember why the fight was worth it. Maya felt her breath catch as he leaned closer. Their first kiss happened there under the alien stars with volcanic fire painting the sky red. Luna, who had been perched nearby, created beautiful aurora flames that danced around them in celebration. Maya had never imagined she could feel this way for weeks. Afterward, Maya and Kieran grew closer while preparing for war. They worked side by side during the day, strategizing and planning at night. They found comfort in each other's arms, sharing stories and dreams. The bond between them deepened into something powerful and unbreakable. But danger struck when they least expected. Eton, elven infiltrator, had managed to sneak into the fortress disguised as a refugee. The assassin waited until Kieran was reviewing supply reports alone in his study. The killer moved with deadly precision, raising a poisoned blade to strike at Kieran's back. But Maya had developed a sixth sense for danger. Through her bond with Luna, she burst through the door at the last second. Without thinking, she threw herself between Kieran and the assassin. The poisoned blade meant for the Dragon Lord plunged into Maya's shoulder instead. Exploded through her body like liquid fire, spreading through her veins. She collapsed as Kieran roared in fury. His human appearance melted away, revealing his true draconic form. He was massive and terrifying, with scales black as obsidian and eyes blazing with rage. The assassin died before hitting the ground, reduced to ash by Dragonfira. Kieran gathered Maya in his arms, calling for healers. Luna arrived within seconds, drawn by Maya's distress. Through their bond, the dragon's anguished cries echoed through the fortress. Maya could barely breathe as the poison burned through her System She was dying, and everyone knew it, but Luna refused to accept this. The dragon pressed her head against Maya's chest and began to glow with silver light power. Flowed from Luna into Maya through their bond. It was agonizing, as if Maya was being torn apart and rebuilt at the same time. Kieran held her through it, whispering desperate pleas for her to hold on. The process lasted for hours. When it finally ended, Maya lay gasping on the floor. She had survived, but something had changed. At her reflection, Maya saw subtle differences in her appearance. Silver scales now traced the line of her scar, glinting in the light. Her eyes sometimes glowed with an inner fire. Like Kieran's healers examined her and delivered shocking news. Maya was not fully elven, as everyone had believed. She carried dormant dragonkin bloodlines hidden deep in her genetics. Her father had used illegal genetic manipulation to suppress these traits. That was why her body had rejected the elven perfection standards. The scar was her true nature, trying to emerge all along. Luna's bond and sacrifice had awakened what was always inside Maya. She was something new, something between elf and dragon. Kieran held her close that night, grateful beyond words that she had survived. He told her she had saved his life at the cost of her own humanity. Maya touched the scales along her scar and smiled. She said she had never felt more herself than she did right now. The hidden parts of her had finally been set free. The days that followed, Maya recovered and grew stronger. The dragonkin traits gave her even greater power and speed when she trained with Kieran. Now she could almost match him. Luna had grown protective and fierce, refusing to leave Maya's side. The time had come to make a choice. Intelligence reports confirmed the Starbreaker would be operational within weeks. If they did nothing, millions would die as the Elven Council destroyed refugee worlds. Maya could lead a strike force to disable the weapon, but it would mean going against her own people, potentially killing Elven soldiers. Kieran told her he would support whatever she decided. He would never force her to fight her own kind. Maya stood on the highest tower of the fortress, looking out at the world that had become her home. She thought of all the people living here in peace. She thought of the children playing in the garden. She thought of Kieran and Luna and the life she had built then. She made her choice. She would stop the Starbreaker, no matter the cost. She would save her people by destroying their corrupt leadership. The war had to end, and she would be the one to end it. Kieran found her there and saw the determination in her eyes. He kissed her deeply and told her he would fight beside her. Together they would face whatever came next. Maya called for the strike force to assemble. Luna roared her challenge to the sky. The final battle was about to begin. The strike force assembled in the launch bay as twin suns rose over the obsidian reach. As Maya stood before 50 warriors chosen from the best fighters across allied worlds, Luna waited behind her, massive and ready for battle. The dragon scales had been reinforced with protective plating, and her claws sharpened to deadly points. Kieran would lead the main fleet as a distraction, drawing Elven forces away from the Starbreaker station. It was a dangerous plan that required perfect timing. Before they parted, Kieran took Maya aside to a quiet corner. He reached into his armor and pulled out a small crystal pendant carved with ancient dragon rune. She placed it around her neck and told her it was a promise. No matter what happened, they would find each other again. Maya kissed him fiercely, trying to memorize everything about this moment. Then she climbed onto Luna's back and signaled her team to board their ships. Fleet launched into space, heading toward the Luminara system. Maya rode Luna through the void, feeling the cold of space around them. The dragon created a protective field that let Maya breathe and stay warm through their bond. She could feel Luna's determination matching her on it. Took 2 days to reach the asteroid belt where the Starbreaker station hit. The massive weapon was built into a hollowed-out asteroid, disguised among thousands of others. Only someone with inside knowledge could find it. Maya guided her team through the field, avoiding detection. Kieran's main fleet engaged the Elven Armada on the far side of the system. Explosions lit up space as the battle began. Maya felt every moment of separation from Kieran like a physical ache, but she pushed the feeling down and focused on the mission. Her team approached the Starbreaker using small stealth craft. Luna stayed close and visible against the black of space. They docked at a maintenance port that Maya remembered from old blueprints. sighed the station Maya. Led her team through familiar corridors. This design was based on elven architecture she had studied as a child. Every turn brought back memories of her old life. This palace where she was mocked, the gardens where she hid, the council chambers where she was sentenced. But Maya was not that frightened girl anymore. She was a warrior with dragon fire in her veins. They fought through security forces, disabling guards with quick precision. Maya's enhanced speed and strength made her nearly unstoppable. Her team followed her lead, trusting her completely. They reached the central control room where massive screens showed the weapon charging Maya's. Breath caught in her throat. The Starbreaker was nearly ready to fire through the window. She could see the targeting system, aimed at refugee worlds. Billions would die when it activated. Standing at the main console was Counselor Thornwood, Maya's father. He turned when the doors opened and his face went pale, seeing his daughter. He had not seen her since she was sent away. Now she stood before him, transformed, with scales glinting along her scar and power radiating from her. He called her a monster and an abomination. Said she had betrayed her own kind by siding with beasts. Maya told him he was the betrayer. He had sold out his people for power and was willing to commit genocide. She showed him proof of his treasons, that she had gathered documents showing he took bribes from multiple factions, messages proving he sabotaged peace negotiations, evidence that he experimented on his own daughter, hiding her dragonkin heritage. Counselor Thornwood's face twisted with rage. He activated the weapon early, overriding safety protocols. The Starbreaker began charging faster than it should. Alarms blared throughout the station. Maya's he could not have victory then. Everyone would die together. The weapon would fire in minutes, destroying everything in range, including the obsidian reaches. Maya's team rushed to shut it down, but the controls were locked. Only a complete system overload could stop it. Naluna's voice echoed in Maya's mind with terrible clarity. The dragon knew what had to be done. Someone had to channel the weapon's energy away from its target. Sit required diving into the core where temperatures reached stellar levels. No ship could survive it, but a dragon with a soul bond could redirect the blast. Maya screamed no through their connection. She begged Luna to find another way, but Luna had already made the choice. The dragon crashed through the station's exterior hull and flew toward the weapon's core. Maya felt every second of Luna's flight through their bond. She felt the heat building as Luna entered the energy stream. Felt the dragon's scales cracking under impossible temperatures. She felt Luna's pain as if it was her own. Luna dove deep into the weapon's heart and spread her wings wide. The dragon became a living conduit, redirecting the massive energy blast. Instead of firing at the refugee worlds, the beam shot into the asteroid field. Thousands of asteroids vaporized in an instant. The Starbreaker tore itself apart from the backlash. Maya collapsed, screaming as she felt Luna dying. The bond between them flickered like a candle in a storm. Counselor Thornwood tried to escape in the chaos, but his own guards arrested him. Having heard everything Maya revealed, they were loyal to their people, not to a corrupt counselor. The station was falling apart, and Maya's team dragged her to the escape ships. She fought them, trying to reach Luna, but they forced her onto a ship and launched through the viewport. Maya saw Luna falling through space. The dragon's beautiful silver scales were blackened and cracked. One wing was completely gone. Maya sobbed as she felt their bond growing weaker. Meanwhile, Kieran's fleet engaged the Elven Armada in fierce combat. When the Starbreaker exploded, the shockwave rippled across the system. Kieran felt it through his connection to Maya. He knew something terrible had happened. Maya's ships broadcast the truth across all Elven channels. She transmitted every piece of evidence against the Council. She showed recordings of Counselor Thornwood activating the weapon to kill millions. She asked proof that the Dragon Lords had been defending innocents all along. The lies that had fueled 3 centuries of war crumbled in minutes. Selvan ships began powering down their weapons. Captains refused to fight for a cause built on deception. Some ships actually turned and fired on the Council's command vessels. The Elven Armada fractured as civil war erupted among their ranks. Maya barely noticed she was focused entirely on Luna's fading presence. Her team brought her ship alongside Luna's drifting body. Maya put on a spacesuit and went outside. She held Luna's massive head in her arms, crying. The dragon's eyes opened weakly, and Maya felt love flowing through their bond. Luna had no regrets saving Maya, and stopping the weapon was worth any price. Maya begged Luna to hold on. She screamed for Kieran across the void. His ship arrived within the hour, moving faster than should be possible. Kieran came outside in his true dragon form. He was enormous and terrifying, but his eyes were gentle as he approached. Lunahai told Maya there was one chance in ancient ritual that could save Luna, but it required binding his own life force to the dying dragon. If Luna died in the future, Kieran would die. Tamaya looked at him with tears streaming down her face. She could not ask him to make such a sacrifice. Kieran smiled and said she was not asking, he was choosing. This Freela Luna had saved the one person who made his ancient life worth living. This was his way of thanking Hertha. Ritual took Arskira, channeled his immortal energy into Luna's broken bodies. Lowly the dragon's scales began to regenerate. The burnt areas healed, leaving scars that matched. Maya's Luna's breathing steadied and strengthened. Finally, the young dragon's eyes opened fully, and she chirped weakly. Maya laughed and cried, holding both Kieran and Luna. Her family was alive. The war was over, but the cost had been devastating. As they flew back to the obsidian reaches Maya held, Kieran Cloche could feel how drained he was from the ritual. He had given so much of himself to save Luna. The galaxy was changing. Around them, the Elven Council had collapsed. Democratic movements were rising on luminar fleets. From both sides were standing down. Peace was finally possible, but Maya felt numb from everything that had happened. She had betrayed her birth people too. Save them, she had nearly lost Luna. In Kieran, she had become something neither fully elf nor a dragon, but caught between when they landed. Maya carried Luna to the healing chambers. The dragon would survive, but would always bear the scars of her sacrifice. Just like Maya, Kieran wrapped his arms around Maya as she finally broke down sobbing. He held her through the storm of emotions. He whispered that she was the bravest person in the galaxy. He told her that together they had changed everything. Maya clung to him, knowing that the hardest part was over. The war had ended. Now they had to build the peace. 6 months had passed since the war ended, and the galaxy was still healing from 3 centuries of conflict. Maya stood in the grand meeting hall, watching representatives from dozens of worlds negotiate trade agreements. Selvan delegates sat beside dragonkin, and humans worked with reptilian species. Was something no one thought they would see in their lifetime. Luna rested beside Maya's chair, fully recovered, but bearing silver scars across her scales. The dragon had grown even larger and more magnificent. Her bond with Maya was stronger than ever. Sometimes Maya could see through Luna's eyes when they were separated, though. New Elven government had offered Maya leadership positions multiple times. They wanted her to become a counselor, or even take her father's old seat. Counselor Thornwood was in prison awaiting trial for treason and war crimes, but Maya had refused every offer. She was no longer fully elven and did not belong in their government. Instead, she had chosen a different path. She became the official ambassador between species, working to build lasting peace. It was exhausting work, requiring her to travel constantly between worlds, but it was important, and Maya threw herself into it with fierce dedication. Kieran supported her completely, even when it meant being apart for weeks at a time. He had his own responsibilities, rebuilding the dragon lord territories and helping refugee populations return home, but they always found their way back to each other. One evening, Maya returned to the obsidian reaches after a particularly difficult negotiation. Was exhausted and frustrated. Some elven factions still refused to accept that they had been the aggressors. Some dragonkin wanted revenge rather than reconciliation building. Peace was harder than fighting war. Kieran found her on their private balcony, staring at the stars. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned into his warmth. He asked if she regretted her choice. Maya thought about everything that had happened. She thought about the girl she used to be, hidden and ashamed. She thought about the warrior she had become, scarred but strong. She touched the scales along her face that marked her as different. Then she turned in Kieran's arms and kissed him. Deeply she told him she regretted nothing. Being sent to him as punishment was the best thing that ever happened to her. Kieran smiled and told her he had something important to ask. He knelt before her, holding out a ring carved from dragon bone and set with a star crystalline, the tradition of both their peoples. He asked her to bond with him permanently, to become his partner in all things. Maya's heart soared as she said yes. Luna, who had been watching from nearby, roared her approval, creating beautiful flame patterns in the sky. The wedding was planned for 3 months later, giving time for guests to arrive from across the galaxy. Would blend elven ceremonies with dragonkin rituals, a celebration of unity between two peoples who had been enemies. For so long, Maya wore a dress of silver and white that left her scarred face completely visible. Her scales glinted like jewels in the light. She refused to hide any part of herself. Kieran appeared in his true dragon form for the ceremony. He was massive and beautiful with scales like polished obsidian. His eyes burned with love as he looked at Maya. Thousands attended the wedding. Elves and dragonkin stood side by side, former enemies, now friends. Luna served as the guardian of the ceremony, creating an arch of silver flame. When Maya and Kieran exchanged vows, the crowd cheered so loudly it echoed across the mountains. Celebration lasted for 3 days. Music and laughter filled the fortress. Maya danced with Kieran in both his forms. She felt happier than she ever imagined possible. Then the final night of celebration, Maya and Kieran stood together watching fireworks paint the sky. Luna lounged nearby, playing gently with 3 small hatchlings. Dragon had laid eggs months ago, and they had recently hatched. The little ones tumbled over each other, chirping and breathing tiny puffs of flame. One of them was silver like Luna, one was black like Kieran's true form. One was an unusual mix of both colors. Maya laughed as the mixed color hatchling climbed onto her lap. The little dragon nuzzled her hand with complete trust. Kieran watched with warmth in his ancient eyes. He said they had created something beautiful together. Together, not just their relationship, but a new future for the entire galaxy. Maya agreed. She looked out at the peaceful city below. Lights glowed in thousands of windows. People of every species lived together in harmony. This was what they had fought for. This was what Luna had nearly died to protect. To protect, a messenger arrived with reports from the border territories. New colonies were being established where elven and dragonkin families lived together. Mixed species schools were opening. Trade routes were flourishing. The galaxy was healing faster than anyone expected. Maya reviewed the reports with satisfaction. Then she set them aside to focus on her family. The hatchlings needed attention, and Kieran wanted to show her something specially. Led her to a private garden he had been cultivating in secret. It was filled with flowers from both their homeworld. Sylvan crystal blossoms grew beside Dragonfire Lilin. The center stood a monument. Bore the names of everyone who had died in the war, both elven and dragonkin, and all the other species. Caught between, Kieran told Maya he built this to remember. Peace was precious, because they knew the cost of war. Maya traced some of the names with her fingers. She had known some of these people. They deserved to be remembered. As they stood in the garden, Luna landed softly nearby. The dragon had left the hatchlings with their caretakers for a moment. Through their bond, Maya felt Luna's contentment. The dragon was happy and healthy. Her scars had healed into patterns that looked almost decorative. Maya reached up to touch her own scars. Then Kieran's hand covered hers. He said those scars told a story of survival and courage. Every mark on her body represented a battle. When Maya smiled and pulled him close, she said she used to think her scars made her ugly. Now she understood they made her who she was, and she would not change a single thing. Years passed in peace and prosperity. Maya and Kieran's work continued, bringing former enemies together. Luna's hatchlings grew into powerful dragons who bonded with warriors of multiple species. New generation grew up knowing cooperation instead of war. Maya sometimes traveled back to Luminara, where she was received as a hero. The elven people had learned the truth about their history. They were working to make amends for past wrongs. Her sisters tried to reconnect with her. They apologized for their cruelty. Maya forgave them, but kept her distance. Her real family was Kieran and Luna, and the life they built together. One evening, Maya stood on her favorite balcony watching the sunset. Kieran joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Luna rested nearby with her grown children. The view was peaceful and beautiful. Maya thought about the scared girl who arrived here in chains so long ago. That girl thought she was being sent to a monster. As she found someone who saw her clearly, someone who loved every part of her, even the parts she had been taught to hide. Kieran asked what she was thinking about. Maya leaned back against him and smiled. She said she was thinking about how grateful she Was for her scars that led her here, for Luna, who saved her life, for Kieran, who showed her what love really meant. She said being given to the Dragon Lord was supposed to be her punishment, but he cherished her more than anyone ever had. Kieran kissed the top of her head gently. He said she had saved him to be. For her his life had been endless duty and war. She brought him joy and hope and a reason to build instead of just defend. They stood together as the stars came out. Luna's soft breathing created a peaceful rhythm in the distance. Ships from 100 worlds docked at the spaceport. The galaxy they had fought so hard to save was thriving, and Maya knew that no matter what challenges came next, they would face them together. Her old life was gone forever, but this new life was everything she never knew. She needed the ugly daughter who was cast out, had become a bridge between worlds. The Dragon Lord, who was feared, had become a symbol of protection and peace. Together they proved that even the deepest wounds could heal, that love could grow in the most unexpected places, that scars could be beautiful, and that sometimes the greatest punishment becomes the greatest gift. Maya smiled as Kieran held her close. Luna chirped softly in contentment. Twin moons rose over the obsidian reaches, and in that moment everything was perfect. Far in the distance, Luna suddenly raised her head. Her eyes began to glow with inner light. Maya felt an urgent pulse through their bond. Something was coming, a new presence. Approaching from beyond the known galaxy, Luna stood and looked toward the stars with focused intensity. Maya and Kieran exchanged glances. Their peaceful time might be ending, but whatever new threat emerged, they would not face it alone. They had each other. They had Luna and her children. They had allies across hundreds of worlds. The next chapter was beginning, and Maya was ready for it. She took Kieran's hand and squeezed it tight together. They turned to face the stars. Whatever came next, they would handle it, because they were stronger together than apart, and their love had already survived the impossible. The story was not over. It was just beginning again.